I see that there's people still rolling in terms of the attendees, so we'll give them just a quick minute to see how many we're going to have, and a few more minutes, and then we'll start this webinar promptly. Also, just a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions whatsoever during the session, there is a chat window. I think this is the one right here, that you can type in your chat questions or comments into the window, and we will do the best we can to answer them throughout. There will be also a Q&A at the end. But if you want to ask questions throughout, we are definitely going to try to answer them throughout the webinar. Also, just wanted to make a note right now as people are rolling in that we will be recording this webinar so that we have it for posterity, and we can also send it on to those who weren't able to make it, or who if you would like to share this on with others in your companies or in your teams. We'll give it a few more minutes, and then we will begin. I think we're about 3 minutes in now after 4. Again, a warm welcome to all of you who have taken the time to attend this webinar today. My name is Dan Tesnjack. I am the head of Global Business Development for Training Express Group. As some of you know, we are an ed tech company, or an educational technology company, that believes in putting people back in the center of a unique technology-driven learning experience. We serve some of the world's largest companies, which are some of you here today represented, in developing their employees' critical communication skills, including languages, specialized language skills, and key communication soft skills, and we do this with a very unique approach. But I think some of you know us very well who are on this call. Others who have joined us from the HR Director Summit in Amsterdam. Again, this is just quick repetition again on who we are and what we do. This webinar is in fact a follow-up to a presentation that I was privileged to give at the HR Director Summit in April in Amsterdam, and it was I had taken a slightly different approach to my topic of consumerization of learning, because I thought it would be interesting to explore how sales and marketing perspectives would be useful to confront this new challenge for L&D people. And that's how this came about. We presented it in Amsterdam. We had a really good session there. We had great feedback, but not everybody was able to participate because there were other sessions happening at the same time. So we decided to run this webinar and also extend it to all of our customers and value clients. So again, thank you for participating today. But also one more thing before I start, I just wanted to thank a key guy who was really inspired me with this presentation, Todd Tauber from The Greed. He contributed greatly to this presentation, so again, thanks so much, Todd. So without further ado, we're going to start looking at this topic, consumerization of learning, a new challenge for learning and development executives and professionals. We're going to look at how and what does this mean, how does it manifest itself nowadays. We're going to take a look a little bit at how the modern learner looks like, and how do they consume learning today, even if they are in corporations, and what can we as L&D professionals do to address some of the challenges that this new development is bringing for us. So first and foremost, let's take a quick look at what is the consumerization of learning. I hope that everybody can see the slide right now that talks about what consumerization is, and just wanted to kind of go quickly through a quick definition of what consumerization, how it is defined. So consumerization, by definition, is what it says on here. It's the reorientation of product and service designs to focus and to market to the end user as an individual consumer, in contrast with an earlier era of organization-oriented offerings designed solely for the business-to-business or business-to-government markets. Okay, that's a mouthful just to begin with. But I think it'd probably be better, come alive better if we talked about this in an actual case. The most prominent case of consumerization in recent years has been the consumerization of IT. Gartner, a famous and a very prominent IT consulting firm, traced the trend of consumerization back to the dot-com collapse, when enterprise IT budgets shrank and many IT vendors shifted focus to the potentially bigger consumer IT markets. The result has been a change in the way that technology enters the marketplace today. Instead of new technology flowing down from businesses to the consumer, for example, as it did with the desktop computer, the flow has reversed, and the consumer market often gets new technology before it enters the enterprise. So, for example, IT departments today are faced with issues such as all of us bringing our own devices to work, such as our iPhones or iPads, etc., and it's not that they are controlling the process and the devices and the software and the structure around security around that, but we are in fact influencing that as consumers, and therefore IT needs to respond. So for learning, this means that workforce development demands, so in other words, what employees want from their employees, are increasingly mirroring the way people consume information and knowledge in their daily lives. So in recent years, there have been a variety of interpretations of this change of learning behavior. People started making distinctions between formal and informal learning. There's also the 70-20-10 model that says that only 10% of workplace learning happens in a formal, i.e. classroom-based setting that is truly L&D led. However, the way we consume knowledge and engage in learning has fundamentally shifted, mainly driven by the availability of technology and content. People can access it anywhere. Think about it. What do you do when you don't know something? Where do you go? Your LMS? Probably not the first thing. You're probably much more likely to hit up Google first and then hope that the piece of content, instruction, article, or whatever is there in the best format possible for you to learn from and apply. So now I'm sure that many of you have been in a situation where you invest a lot of time, money, and effort into an L&D solution or a new service that you're launching, and then your employees don't engage. And I'm sure that makes us all feel very, very badly. So the problem is that engaging learners nowadays is a major problem. Almost 7 out of 10 people say that they're having a harder time getting workers to engage with L&D offerings these days. Now, everybody is obsessed with engagement. The business media, trade magazines, blogs, our competitors, vendors, and they're all buzzing about employee engagement. But what is it that they really mean is they mean people's attention, they mean their effort, they mean their passion, and they mean their loyalties. Now, why is this happening? Why aren't people engaging in the learning offerings that you as L&D professionals are putting in front of them? Let's take a look at this. One of the questions that I was wondering about, in fact, was, is it because the millennials themselves, is it because they don't have the attention span or aren't interested in learning per se, and that's why we get these low kinds of engagements? In fact, the opposite seems to be true. For millennials, training and development is the most important job benefit. And for most companies, this is a major opportunity to engage and retain them. So if employees do care about their development and growth, why are they not engaging in what you as L&D professionals have to offer to them? Well, perhaps the answer is in the fact that the modern learner is quite different than what he was just a few years ago. So let's take a look at this modern learner. Now, this is a slide that was just provided to us by Burson, by Deloitte. I love this infographic because it really shows us all the reality that we are currently dealing with. But then again, if you look at this, none of this stuff is really news, right? I mean, it's great to look at some of the figures, but fundamentally, employees are overwhelmed, they're distracted, they're impatient. And again, some of the results show that. For example, web designers have 5 to 10 seconds to engage a user before they click away. 5 to 10 seconds is not a long time. For example, too, we open our smartphones 9 times an hour. And I'm sure that some of us would say that we do this more than 9 times. And finally, too, 2/3 of knowledge workers, those people that we are all arguably trying to train and develop, complain that they don't have the time to do their jobs. As a consequence, we have 1% of a typical work week to engage our employees in a training and development activity. So therefore, they also expect more than the same old classroom or e-learning experience, one would argue. They want it to be mobile, they want it to be on-demand, collaborative, empowered to make their own choices. So where do they find what they want? Where do they find what they're looking for? There's been an explosion of alternative ways of learning that is accessible to everyone all the time nowadays. If you look at some of these brands, you might know them, but so many of these now are available to every single one of us as consumers, and we can consume our own learning and get what we want at any given point in time. But I wanted to just highlight a few specific facts here too that again mirror this particular trend. MOOCs, for example, have been exploding. There's been 35 million people enrolled in MOOCs in the last 4 years, with 2015 enrollments doubling those of 2014. Another striking fact is that expert and self-authored videos have been exploding. They in fact account for more than 55% of all internet traffic today. And on-demand live mentors, trainers, and coaches are getting huge investments to build out their offerings. In addition to this, there's an endless and growing array of online courses, video courses, MOOCs, as I just said, microlearning, podcasts, flipped classroom methodology offerings, blended boot camps, open courseware, articles, you name it. And it all feels a little bit overwhelming. Here's another stark illustration of the enrollment and usage of Coursera versus a well-known and much-used solutions among many L&D departments, Skillsoft particularly. I would venture to bet that at least 70% of you guys attending here probably have some kind of a contract with Skillsoft and are generally struggling with engagement and adoption. I hope that you're beginning to see that the problem of why learners today are not as engaged as desired. It's kind of simple. L&D has competition. Due to the consumerization of IT and hence learning, people are now empowered more than ever before to take control of their own learning. Nearly half of professionals say that they already look outside of their companies for development opportunities. The good news is that they are still learning. 80% of people do some kind of career-related training activity at least once a year. 60% say they do it up to 9 times a year. The bad news is that what they are looking for, L&D, or traditional L&D, is not providing, or at least not, or it's at least not making it easy for them to buy. Workers are flocking to on-demand, mobile, social learning experiences, while L&D is still stuck on formal training and old-school e-learning courses. That's still where 80 to 90% of L&D's time and money goes. L&D used to have a monopoly on workplace learning, and now it doesn't. Remember, this is the process of consumerization, like with IT. Whether you like it or not, you now have to compete for your employees' time, attention, and budgets. And right now, a lot of us are losing. Bottom line, nobody seems to be buying what L&D is selling. And that, in my view, is actually a sales and marketing problem, not only a learning issue. And again, this is something that I know a little thing or two about. In fact, I've talked to many clients recently of mine, and they've repeatedly asked me whether they should be doing some sales training themselves. And I think that's a really good idea for L&D people to do some kind of marketing and sales training, because this is going to be an issue that you're going to be encountering more and more. So again, launching a learning initiative or solution involves a lot of selling. You have to sell up to the managers who make the decision and control the budget. You have to sell down to the learner and consumer. And I think that most of us are quite skilled at selling our initiatives up to one degree or another. but having to sell them down to the consumer is perhaps newer and more challenging. And here are some sales basics that I believe can be very helpful. So we're going to go over 3 basic sales and marketing rules that I believe can help you in really understanding, 1, who your clients are, who your users are, how do you communicate your message clearly and educate the consumer, and 3, how do you offer solutions that are aligned with customer needs. These are the 3 sales principles that I follow in my job, and they have served me well, and I believe that if we apply these to the same issue of the consumerization of learning, and the competition that we have for the learner's attention, then this is actually going to be of some use for you. So let's look at the first one. Rule number 1, know your clients. Now, as we said, the modern learner is a very, very complex thing, as we saw just earlier in that infographic. There's many, many facets that are impacting and influencing that learner. But again, in sales, rule number 1 is research your customer and find out everything before you meet them. And 2, ask them really insightful questions that will reveal deeper drivers. No one customer is the same. The motivations for buying or engaging are very, very diverse. We need to get curious about who our customers are and why. Because when we do it, it shows that we care. And in my experience, a customer that feels cared about is more likely to engage, listen, and trust. It sounds obvious, but nonetheless, as you see on this slide, most of the organizations that we talk to, and as the research indicates, they actually don't do it. Only 1/3 of organizations say that they understand their learners beyond some of the basic demographics. However, needs vary widely across many other dimensions, such as location, accessibility, urgency, preferred medium, cost, but also learning styles. Visual, is somebody visual? Is somebody auditive? Is somebody inductive or deductive? What are their priorities from a career perspective? What are their problems? What are their career goals? What are their general habits? What are their work environments? What do they really care about when it comes to their work and career? We need to understand that if we are to offer them something that they truly want, not just what they need. So how do you do that? How do you go about finding out? It's actually simple. You ask them, and there's lots of ways to do that. You can do focus groups, interviews, surveys, pointed feedback, Google Analytics, and other vendors that can help you with really understanding your consumer, your ultimate clients, in a much, much deeper way. At the same time, it's equally important to understand managers and executives, since they are the key to funding and training and on-the-job application. Again, here too, go beyond what is the norm and understand the personal drivers that move managers to action. In fact, we need to not just get closer to executives, we need to influence them and educate them. What they want to know is not the learning itself. They don't even want to know about the application so much. They don't even want to know about ROI and efficiency. What they really care about is the impact of the learning that you deliver. So we need to understand that in much, much more detail. And we need to educate our executives. In fact, we need to do that because they drive learning needs. They shape the culture. They are usually the ones paying, so they can lend crucial support. That is why Tiffany's, the jeweler, advertises wedding rings to men as well as to women, and why snack food makers promote to adults in-store and advertise to kids. That buying decision that the end user is making is not a one-dimensional one. There are multiple stakeholders. But again, executives care about things other than what the learners or we do. They are interested in the wider-ranging impact of learning on their business, not in the learning itself. They want to know how learning drives results. In our business, that meant that we needed to dig deeper into the impact of communication on businesses and related to things such as increased productivity due to faster, more effective communication. We had to look at situational impact due to less miscommunication, for example, in negotiations. We started looking at things such as how do we improve customer service marks due to improved communication. and even on engagement. How does engagement increasing due to the fact that people are collaborating, communicating more? And this means that we all need to stretch further and look at these results in the context of how executives really want to see them and how in the way that they care about them. Finally, one of the most critical groups that we also need to understand much, much deeper are the direct line managers themselves. I think all of you on this call will agree that they are by far the most important group when it comes to actual application, prep work, engagement of the learners themselves. However, as we see here again, the vast majority of L&D organizations don't involve their frontline managers in the planning or reviewing of their organization's learning initiatives. And again, that's why too often these managers don't help. I hear it all the time. They resist or even block training. Only 25% of direct line managers, for example, have conversations with workers to set expectations before training, and only 35% follow up. That's a huge loss when we're talking about the application and the impact of training itself. So, as I said a moment ago, only less than a third of L&D teams actually consult with their business lines on a weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis. Again, like any good marketer or salesperson, it is important to put yourselves into the manager's shoes and understand what's important to them and their teams, why the time is worthwhile, and how is it going to help their business achieve their goals. So dive deeper and get curious about your customers. Rule number 2, communicate your message clearly and educate your customer. Now, once we fully understand your customer, you can get to crafting insightful messages that help them more than just off giving them product information. And this is what I've seen way too many times. Many times we get into an LMS and all we get is, this is the product, this is the offering, etc. But it doesn't really compel a consumer to go and look at what the product is and how this actually can contribute to their own development and to their own advancement. Today's consumers have a wealth of resources at their fingertips and access an infinite number of customer reviews, blog spots, websites to inform their buying and consumption decisions. They are smart, informed, and empowered, and we need to start to treat them that way. Research shows, in fact, that today's consumers, and this is important, a consumer is 60% through their buying journey by the time they reach out to the company sales reps, i.e. to their LMS and their managers. In other words, by the time they reach out and read what you have on your LMS, they've already done their research. So what your research or what your LMS is outlining about the product better be more and educate them more than what they already have learned. Otherwise, they will not click on that learning item. For us in marketing and sales, that means that we need to reach consumers much earlier in their buying journeys and continuously educate them about trends, needs, technology, etc. The same is true for L&D. You need to become advisors. You need to engage with consumers much earlier, and I'll get to that point a little bit later. But I wanted to share one thing here with you here. As I just said, in terms of getting to understand and engaging with the learner earlier in their buying cycle, this piece of research comes from the Corporate Executive Board, and it shows that the sales experience, in other words, the experience with L&D that a user or an employee has contributes to 53% to their buying decision and loyalty, more than price, product, service, or brand. For L&D, it's critical to take on the responsibility of creating that experience. And what does that experience need to entail? So take a look at the orange box. It needs to entail, or again, what we need to do is we need to offer the consumer valuable perspectives on the market. We need to help them navigate alternatives. We need to help them avoid potential landmines before they invest time and effort in one course versus another. We need to help them get educated on issues and outcomes as it relates to their career. And last but not least, we need to offer them an easy buying experience. But these are the things that consumers per se and buyers will value, and this is the information that it's critical to communicate to the end users who are buying L&D services or who are consuming L&D services rather. It is critical, again, to communicate the value and the relevance of your learning offering effectively and to educate your employees beyond just basic product information, but about the value and the impact that this will have on their future. And in order to do that, you need to hone in your message on what matters to them most. Fact is that employees care about career development almost twice as much than compensation and benefits and work environment. And learning development is key for them in advancing in their organizations. Help them understand what impact learning will have on their opportunities for growth and advancement. Use this opportunity to communicate as an advisor rather than telling them what training they should take or quote-unquote buy. As a matter of fact, this is probably this was in fact the most powerful slide that we shared at the Amsterdam event when we came across, and this again comes from it's a recent study from Burson. But this is something I think that you all should write down somewhere and share with your employees and your colleagues. The learning curve is the earning curve. This is a very powerful message that employees need to know about. As I said, Burson's recent research clearly shows the correlations between education and earning potential. He says, and I quote, "Just a reminder for all of you in L&D, HR, or just business professionals in general, this is something you can take advantage of. Coach your people, spend money on quality onboarding and career development, reward people for helping others in their job, create a great self-directed learning experience at work. Today, the quality, experience, and timeliness of your training and education is more important than ever, and is important to L&D as well as it is important to the employees themselves. This is an opportunity to communicate the value of your learning as it relates to people's job advancement, career, perhaps even their existence. This is highly emotional stuff, and can have a real impact on whether or not people engage in a learning activity or not. So, help your learners navigate alternatives as L&D curators of content. Inform them about most recent trends in learning, help them understand their learning styles, educate them about potential landmines and missteps that they could take, and inspire them about the value of each learning event. And this again, it requires us to really rethink how to do that differently than we have done so far. In fact, as an example, as a follow-up to the Amsterdam event, I had many of the L&D people come up to me and say that they are going to do a shadowing program of their sales and marketing people, or in fact marketing courses, to learn more about messaging, learn more about understanding their customers, etc. Finally, offer solutions that are aligned with customer needs. Well, this goes without say, but it's surprising how much amiss L&D organizations are when it comes to providing what employees truly want. Only 15% of employees think that the training they get at work is actually useful for their careers. That is a shocking number, and I hope that strikes a nerve with you as well. But I believe that the consumerization of learning makes it imperative to relinquish some level of control that L&D traditionally has had over the learning and decisions that their employees are making. Empowering your learners, giving them the information, understanding them better, and giving them choice with smartly curated content is truly the name of the game. So let's take a look at where progressive companies spend their money on. So this is comes from the Corporate Learning Fact Book in 2015 and shows where the most progressive L&D organizations nowadays do invest their money. And fact is that when it comes to instructor-led training, virtual instructor-led training, and traditional e-learning, companies are investing 20% less. However, I should say here that this still represents the biggest chunk of investment for L&D organizations. They are investing more in on-the-job experiences, more in learning via collaboration and coaching, and last but not least, more learning via on-demand resources. So that again, when we think about that modern learner at the beginning that we had, it needs to be on demand. It needs to be at their fingertips. It needs to be short and concise and effective. It needs to be flexible. It needs to be reschedulable, and many, many other elements that need to be part of that experience for the learner. This is where L&D organizations are moving, and these are the ones that are having the biggest success. I should also say that there are a variety of e-learning and virtual ILT providers out there who are making some very interesting changes to their offerings that are making them much, much more aligned with some of the trends that we're seeing here. And I'll get to that in a quick second. So this is where they're investing. This is the resources that they're investing into, but they're also beginning to relinquish control a little bit more and start empowering their employees to make choices. In fact, not just the employees, but also the managers themselves too. So there's a distinct difference on what it means to facilitate versus manage learning. I would argue that there are still specific skill sets and company needs where managing the process is required to ensure overall compliance and operational safety, as we see in the upper line here where it says managing learning. This is, again, where you need to schedule it, these things need to happen, and these things and these pieces of content or these learning items can be delivered in classroom LMSs and etc. and courses in a much more traditional way. However, there is a large part of learning that can be reconstructed and where employees and managers are empowered to make their own decisions, where they drive the learning. And that is on the lower, in the lower row, where you see where it's about strategic and performance-based learning, soft skills, other skills that are empowering people to become better, that are not just traditional or functional-based learning. But especially when we see, and what we have seen specifically in soft skills, this is very, very applicable, that people want choice, again, because all of them have different needs. But you, as in L&D, are not the only ones that need to adapt to this new reality. It's also a challenge for us, the suppliers and the vendors. Vendors need to adjust. We need to offer much more flexibility in our offerings, services, and buying models. And this is what we have done at Training Express Group over the last few years. We have created much more granular and modularized content that allows learners to choose not only general language development, but specific communication skill sets that are covered in a much shorter time period. We have also extended our content beyond language to contextual communications and soft skills, allowing for much more diverse but still tightly managed content sets. Another area we needed to change was various mediums of delivery, from pure digital videos, mashups, to increasing human interaction, especially important, as I said earlier, in soft skills development, in a flipped classroom model, again, catering to the various learning needs of customers. We've built in feedback loops for direct customer feedback and rating of the content of learning resources. So it's not only feedback from it's not only the feedback that they receive from trainers, but it's also that learners can see feedback from learners and vice versa, relying much more on social dynamics. And finally, we also believe that as a supplier, we need to start looking much more closely into what we call the B to B to C model, because it really is required for us to apply a model like that if we are to work with people who are empowered and who want to make their own choices. And in that sense, here's just a short and a little graph that explains what the B2B2C model is in a more generic term. But our experience has really been that this needs to be a real partnership with our clients, where it basically becomes a, if you will, a channel relationship, but a very, very tightly managed channel relationships that really outline some win-win scenarios for us as well as for the customers. We are now, for example, experimenting with credit-based approaches that give employees a certain amount of credits and empowers them to buy the combination of learning experience they would find most valuable for their development. But for example, instead of just freely giving a client a frame agreement to just use this or just to sell this, we in fact use our digital platform to bring a common standard that allows users then to add on services on top of it and add more human-to-human interaction to their learning experience. And with that, we are increasing their flexibility, increasing the flexibility of the products and services themselves, and making sure that they are getting some level of empowerment while we are still, or rather you as L&D and our clients are still really keeping control over overall content and content curation itself. So again, these are just ideas, and this is really just a start, and there is much more to be done and to explore. However, fact is that consumerization of learning is going to require new ways of thinking and technology that will further empower learners to make the best learning choices. It will also challenge L&D to upskill in sales and marketing practices to be more effective enablers of learning. So again, the consumerization of learning is in part a sales and marketing problem, and 3 simple sales rules can begin to help you with that. Rule number 1, know your customer. It's the modern learner if you want to engage them. Rule number 2, communication. Speak to them about the things that matter to them. Let them know that the learning curve is the earning curve. And rule number 3, offer solutions that are aligned with customer needs. Curate the best content. Think ahead. Don't be afraid to experiment. Empower them and empower them to make their own decisions, and challenge your supplier to provide new business models and ideas to conquer this challenge. So for now, this is all I have, and I hope that there's at least 1 or 2 questions, and I hope that this was useful for those of you who attended. You also see my information here. You're free to reach out to me directly at any given point in time. But let's just give it a quick second to see if there's any questions, comments from the audience. No questions? Well, good. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out directly to me or to Amanda Nolan or to our marketing team. We're happy to answer any questions. We will also